Hi, it's Jason here at Fraser Valley Rose Farm. It's mid-November now, and I thought it would be a good time to take a video on some things you can avoid to try to keep your roses alive over the winter. Now, the very last thing I'd like to do is to scare people into thinking that roses are hard to keep alive over the winter. In fact, the intent of this video is precisely the opposite. I think that people tend to focus on doing something to keep their rose alive. They want to do that all on their own. They're a northern temperate climate shrub. They're well suited in most cases to come through the winter just fine. They want to survive, but people do things in some cases that make that less likely. So in a way, I'm trying to make your life a little bit easier. In general, it is easier to just not do something rather than do it. So the first of those things I want to talk about is pruning. Take those pruners, put them on pause, and I want to show you how I prune roses for the winter. Okay, so this rose here is Folksinger. It's a buck rose. It's reputed to be quite hardy, and what you can see on it is that really I haven't done much to it. It's got a little bit of a misshapen. It's a little bit heavier here on the left than it is on the right, so it's a little out of balance. It probably has more material in the center of it here than I'd like to start next season with. So it's definitely going to need a reshaping and a bit of a pruning before the spring starts, but right now I've left it. So there's a reason for that, and I wanted to take you through that really quick so you'll understand it. When you see a rose get winter damage, where you see it is you see it on the tips. You'll see tips like these, the extremities of the rose. If the rose is a little bit tender, if we have a mild winter or a moderate winter or a severe winter, what you'll see is you'll see dieback on this stem. So it'll be black back to here, or further down, or in a severe winter, even further down. And I guess the comparison I'd make, although it's not a very savory one, is to think of a hiker or somebody who got caught in Arctic climates and ended up with a bit of frostbite. You're going to see that on their fingers and toes, the tips of their nose and ears, the extremities. So it happens the same way on the rose. They get desiccated by the winter winds on the top end of their growth. So that may happen to a much lesser degree on, say, this guy here, which is a winter hardy rose called Rosa blanda. But over here, this one is a grandiflora rose, and you may see some of that winter damage. So I guess the question becomes, what do you think is going to happen? Let's say we went down here, and before the winter, we cut it back to within 12 inches and a few canes and that kind of thing. Well, again, in a mild winter, not a big deal. You lose a couple of inches to winter kill, and the rose is fine. But in a harsh winter, if it dies back 6 or 12 or 18 inches, and you're close to the ground, that dieback is going to get right into the crown of the rose, and it will be dead. So that's the first thing that I'd ask you to avoid, is just leave your major structural pruning until the spring of the year. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk to you about is about fertilizing. Okay, now fertilizer can be applied to your rose all the way through the season up until, in my view, up until about August, and then I hold back the fertilizer. The reason I do that, and another reason why you don't prune late in the season, is that both fertilizing and pruning give the rose a strong signal that it should begin to grow again. For hardy roses, like I mentioned, that's not going to make a difference. The hardy roses are like the Starks on Game of Thrones. They say winter is coming right from the beginning of spring, and they keep on preparing. But the tender roses, they don't have as much common sense. They keep on growing when they have the opportunity. So by cutting them late in the season in August and onward, or by giving them lots of fertilizer again from August or onward, you give them a strong signal to continue growing. So I want to show you on a couple of roses here what it looks like when they harden off and what it looks like when they... Okay, so this is a centifolia rose named, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Robert Le Diable. And it's an old garden rose insofar as what it does is it grows during the spring, blooms in one big flush, and then it begins hardening off immediately. So you can see that this tissue, all the way to the very tip of the rose, is firm, almost not bendable,
and the rose has done a great job of putting itself to bed for the winter. Now I'm going to walk over this way, just to the end of my row here, and show you this one, Daybreaker. And isn't that astonishing? Here it is, middle of November. It's still throwing blooms, it's still throwing buds. This rose has no common sense. So this new growth that's at the top here, I'm going to show you that there with that red on it, stands no chance at all. If it were to frost tonight, or go into a deep freeze, or get some snow or wind or freezing rain, that's dead. What I'm hoping is that the growth that's lower down here is hardened off enough that there's enough energy left. But that's the difference between some roses that have the common sense to go to sleep for the winter and go dormant and really set up firm wood, and some that they probably have some more subtropical species into their breeding, and so they'll want to keep on going way late in the season. So this is the reason why I say don't prune or fertilize into August or September, is because you will encourage this kind of behavior, and this kind of behavior should not be encouraged.
Okay, the third thing I wanted to talk to you about is about mulching. And that's something else I think you can skip, particularly in our climate. This one here is Alina, and you can see I followed rule number 1. I didn't prune this one back, and I also did not fertilize this. And what I'm also not going to do is I'm not going to throw a big heavy mulch around the base of the plant. As you can see, throughout the season, I do believe in mulching. I have no problem throwing down organic mulch or wood chips or that kind of thing around the base of the rose. What I don't do is I don't throw mulch onto the crown of the rose. And you'll sometimes see those instructions where they say, well, pile sawdust or bark mulch around the base of your rose to try to make it hardier. And I think it's the precise opposite or wrong thing to do, particularly in our climate. And I'm just going to show you here. I'm going to throw some mulch down here. Don't worry, it won't stay here. But if I took this, and it's kind of a wet mulch, and I pushed it into the crown of the plant, what that's going to do is that's going to serve to hold moisture against the wood at the crown of the plant. Now the crown is actually the part of the plant that is most susceptible to failing or rotting. It's the one thing your rose can't recover. So if you lost a cane way up high, you can cut it back, get some winter damage, that's okay. But if you lose the crown, you're done for. So it may be that in a harder winter climate, say Edmonton or something like that, that you may have to take some measures on some of your more tender roses to keep them alive over the winter. I guess what I'd say is that there's probably a way to do that, and I hear people talking about using bubble wrap or just a dry straw or hay wrapped in burlap around the base of the rose or around some of the canes of the rose. One thing I will say is that I'm sure that when they do it, they take an awful lot of caution to make sure that they aren't taking a wet material and holding it against the base of the rose. And so in our climate, here the West Coast, Fraser Valley, it's quite a wet winter. Even the straw idea kind of freaks me out. I don't think that would be the right thing to do. In fact, I don't mulch any of my roses over the winter. They're fully hardy, even though we do get winter outflows that occasionally get to about -10 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but yeah, that's something I would avoid. Don't put wet mulch against the base of your rose. Just leave it natural. Let it come through the winter like that. And if you are going to mulch, just be real cautious that it is not a wet mulch. So there you go. All right, well, thank you for listening to 3 things I wouldn't recommend you do to your roses. Try to keep them alive over the winter. If you've already done those things, no big deal. Probably your rose will come through just fine. But maybe it's something you can save yourself the effort of in future years, and your roses will probably be better off for it. Again, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below this video.